about no matter whatever we're going through, that God will be there for us. And talk about a story in the Bible where there was a fight going on with an army, and God told the people on behalf, through Elijah, he said, listen, what I need you to do is, you're in the valley, and all the kids can go to kids' church. Sorry. But what I want you to do is, I want you to, even though you're tired, and even though you have traveled a long time in the desert, and even though you might be exhausted, and even though you feel like giving up, I want you to dig ditches. And he said, if you dig ditches, I will send the rain to nourish your soul. And I encourage you that no matter how you're feeling today, to make sure that you continue to dig. The worst possible thing that you can do is to stop digging. When God says to dig ditches, you need to be very assured that He will keep His promise, and He will send the rain to nourish your soul. If you would turn with me to Judges chapter 6 this morning. Judges chapter 6, this is one of my favorite stories in the whole Bible. And it's a really simple story, but it's a great story, and I think I like it so much because it reminds me so much of myself. How many have ever been afraid? I've been afraid a couple times. And I don't know if I've ever told you this story before, but I'm going to tell you. I was 12 years old, and I was staying over at my friend John's house. And my friend John, was one of those friends everyone wanted to be friends with. He had all the toys, he had the snowmobiles, he had the motorcycles, he had the dirt bikes, he had all the cool stuff. And so we always used to stay at John's, and behind John's house, John had a little barn that they would keep all their snowmobiles and all that stuff in. And then above that barn, they had a loft. And in the loft, they had beds and video games. It was like this greatest spot. So I was 12 years old. So this is where we would spend the night there. We would hang out, and it was awesome. And so this one Friday night, John's like, you guys want to come to my house? And so it was me and John and our friend Lloyd. And which is a really weird name for a 12-year-old. I've always thought that. But anyways, his name was Lloyd. And Lloyd is spelled with 2 L's at the beginning. I don't see the need for that. But anyways, that's for another day. But so me and John and Lloyd, we got to stay up there. So we're up there, and guys get up there hanging. We're 12 years old. We're playing video games, like really cool video games, like Pac-Man and Asteroids. Cool, not like this garbage they play today, but like Pac-Man. It's cool stuff. And so we're playing this, and then listen, every bit of this story I'm going to tell you is true. And so we're there, and it's probably like 1 in the morning. I don't know how old, 10, it could be 10 for all I know. I was 12 years old. And so it was really late, according to me. And so we're sitting there, and all of a sudden we heard this noise. And we get up and turn down the volume, because there was no remotes back then, I don't think, or we didn't have one. We turn down the volume, and we listen. And immediately, you're in the barn, in the backyard, it's late at night, it's dark, and you start to get scared. My wife, she doesn't watch anything, like any type of scary movie or any type of scary show, and especially at night. So she won't even watch like CSI at night. And I say, Penny, just because you watch a show about someone dying, they're not coming here just because it's dark out. But anyways, I can't get that figured out. So anyway, we don't watch anything like that at night. So anyways, we heard the noise. So me, John, and Lloyd, and it turned down the volume, and I was, honestly, I got scared right away. And I said, John, you should go check to see what that is. And he's like, I'm not going down there. And we're like, you go down there, Lloyd. And Lloyd's like, no way, I'm not going down there. You know, typical boys, they try to act tough, but they don't want to admit they're tough, admit that they're scared. And so we say, oh, maybe we didn't really hear anything, so maybe we'll just go on. So we put the video game back on, started playing a video game. Turn it back down. Come on, you go down and check. No, I'll go down and check. No, I'm not. Finally, John's like, listen, after probably half an hour of, John's like, I'll go. So John goes, I'll try to make this story quick. So John goes downstairs, and the stairs are on this one side. So John goes all the way down. It's dark. The lights are on upstairs, but the lights are off downstairs. And John goes down, flicks on a little light, and then we don't hear from him. We're at the top of the stairs. Hey, John! You down there? No answer. I'm like, oh, this is scary. Lloyd, you should really go down and check to see what's going on down there. He's like, I am not going down there. Like, Lloyd was a little skinny little guy. I was much bigger than him. He's like, I am not going down there. No way, no how. 15, 20 minutes goes by. Seems like forever. Just keep hearing. So I go to the stairs and I look down and I sneak down a few stairs and I can't see anything. So I said, you know what, I'm going to go. So I snuck down the stairs, because I'm a ninja. And I snuck down and I started to make myself out into the center of the room. And I was walking down the stairs here and the door's right here to go outside. And I look outside and there's 3 stairs that go downstairs. And I see John lying on the ground. And I could just see his feet. And I was scared. And I'm like, Lloyd, you have to come down and help me. And he's like, I am not going down there. And he was saying some other words. And so anyway, so I grab a stick. And I walk over and I see John. And he's lying down at the bottom of these 3 stairs outside. And he's got blood all over him. And I start to panic. I put down my stick and I go down the 3 stairs and I grab him by the cuffs of his jeans. And I grab him and I pull him up the stairs, which seemed like a good idea at the time. And he's coming up the stairs and has been on the 3 or 4 steps up the stairs. So I pull him up the stairs into the room and he's got blood all over him. And I go to bend down. And I go to bend down, John, are you okay? And I go to shake him. And somebody grabs me from behind.
Oh my God.
And he was much taller than me, much bigger than me. And he grabs me from behind. And I yell out for Lloyd. He was not coming down. He's at the top of the stairs. I could see Lloyd. He's at the top of the stairs. He's about 2 steps down. And he's got about a 6-foot long metal pipe. And he's yelling all sorts of stuff at the top of the stairs. And he's hitting the walls and the stairs. Get out of here, get out. Like he's trying to chase off a cat or something. He's like, get out of here, I'm gonna. No, you're not, Lloyd. You're not even coming downstairs. So he grabs me and he pulls me inside and he kind of pulls me out of the side of Lloyd and I'm trying to fight and get away and he's about over 6 feet tall. I was short. And he's pulling me back and he's pulling me back. And I remember I was trying to get away from him and then I remember he said words to me that I'll never forget. As he pulls me back into the shadow and he's fighting with me, he whispers into my ear, just play along. And I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I'm like, this is awesome. And so he busts this, whatever it was, all over me, and there's red everywhere, blood. Red, and he throws me on the ground, and Lloyd is beside himself. And so, who I know now is an older brother friend of John, they set the whole thing up. Dave starts up the stairs after Lloyd. Lloyd is at the top of the stairs with a 6-foot pipe, banging and yelling and swearing and threatening. And Dave just starts walking up the stairs towards him. And Lloyd did the most amazing thing. He peed his pants. I didn't say I was a good person. He was so afraid. He's standing here with a metal pipe. And I'm lying on the floor dead. John's Lloyd is beside himself. Have you ever been? That's not nice, I know.
No.
I know.
It's funny.
But have you ever been really afraid? I mean, I was afraid. I was pretending I wasn't afraid. I was acting like I wasn't afraid. I grabbed a stick like I wasn't afraid, but I was afraid. In Judges chapter 6, verse 11, we see a man named Gideon. And Gideon is very, very afraid. He's doing something that's very strange. And he's afraid. And I want you to know that fear is not from God. But here we have Gideon, and he's very afraid. So in Judges chapter 6, verse 11. So here is what we have. We have Gideon, and he's sitting in a wine press. So in a wine press in those days, it wouldn't be anything really fancy like we would have today. It would just be an indent in the ground, or something very primitive that they could put grapes in and they could start to press for wine. But it would most likely be an indent in the ground that would be just enough to be able to stand in and to protect what was in there from the elements and all that. So here we have Gideon, and he's in a wine press. So he's sitting in a hole in the ground, and he's threshing wheat. In verse 11, the angel of the Lord came to him and sat down under the oak tree of Orpha that belonged to Joash the Abizarite, where his son Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress to keep it from the Midianites. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." So Gideon's people were oppressed by the Midianites. The Midianites would steal their food, they would steal their livestock, they would steal their grain, they would steal all of their things. And so this was what was happening. Gideon was afraid. He was not just, a little nervous that the Midianites would come by. He was afraid. He was so afraid that he was hiding in a hole in the ground. So here we have Gideon hiding in a wine press, and he's threshing wheat. What exactly is threshing wheat? It's separating the wheat from the chaff. So the wheat would have little heads on it, and around the head would be a little cover that would protect it, and that is called chaff. And so what Gideon would do is he would take the wheat and he would bang it on the ground. And then once he banged it on the ground and loosened everything up, he would take handfuls of wheat and chaff, and he would take it and he would throw it in the air. And then the wind would come by, and the wind would blow away the chaff because it was really light, and then the wheat would fall to the ground. So he would continue this process. He would pick up the wheat and the chaff, he would throw it in the air, and the wind would come and blow the chaff away. And then he would grab a handful, he would throw it in the air, and the wind would come and blow the chaff away, until he was left with wheat. So here he is, he's sitting in a hole in the ground, and he's threshing wheat. He's picking it up, he's throwing it in the air. And the plan would be that the wind would come and blow away the chaff. And so when you were threshing wheat in those days, you needed wind. You needed to have wind that would blow away the chaff. You needed that. So you either needed a big fan, which I'm not really convinced that they would have a large industrial fan hanging around anywhere. So they would need wind. But here we have Gideon in a hole, throwing wheat up in the air and chaff. A place where the wind could not easily get to him because he's underground. So he's doing things totally wrong. So he would be sitting in a hole, throwing wheat and chaff, and maybe a little bit of wind would take some away. But the process would take an incredibly longer time to do because he was in a hole. So here we have Gideon in a wine press. They didn't have fancy tools in their wineries. It would have been some kind of indent in the ground. When I read the Bible, there's so many interesting stories, and often it's the very simple stories like this. So here he is, sitting in a hole, throwing the wheat and chaff. And Gideon's in the hole for one reason only, because he's afraid. He's afraid of the Midianites. And so he has decided that he's going to hide so that they don't steal his wheat, they don't steal his food, or hurt his family. So he is hiding. We do really weird things when we're afraid. Really weird things. If I could have my time back, I would have not gone down those stairs in that shed. And I often think that when you watch CSI or you watch shows like that, what are you doing? You know there's a murderer, and you go in there at night by yourself with a flashlight. I would have a bazooka. Like, there's no way that I would do it. But you do really weird things when you're afraid. You make really poor decisions when you're afraid. When you let fear grip your heart, you do really poor things. And so Gideon did a few things that we cannot do when we're afraid. The first thing Gideon did was he let fear dictate his actions. He let fear dictate his actions. He was afraid. He had fear. He had anxiety. He had whatever he had. And he let fear dictate how he was going to act. So he went into the ground to do a job that could not be done in the ground. It needed the wind. But he let fear dictate his actions. On Sunday, we shared about Keep Digging, and I was sharing, and if you haven't seen the message from Sunday, I'd really recommend you go back and watch it. But I shared about how Penny has been going through some anxiety. And so Sunday I shared about that, and things are going really well, and I believe God is just touching her in an amazing way. So Monday I went about my business on Monday, and I was in my office and praying. I don't know. I'm not that smart, so I was praying, God, like, what is this about? Like, I know that you're going to bring us through, but why just out of the sudden at 37 years old? Are you 37? Nailed it. 37 years old. Why out of the blue? Like, what's going on here? And God showed me something. And listen, you know me. You know that I don't see the devil behind every doorknob or the devil under every doily. You know. But I was in my office, I was praying. And God showed me something. And he didn't write it on the wall, just something that he just dropped into my heart. He said, do you remember in November when at the prayer meeting for the Deep Roots prayer meeting on Wednesday night, do you remember that you prayed against anxiety? I said, yes, I do. He said, do you remember in the December prayer meeting, do you remember that you guys prayed against anxiety? Against anxiety for Grace Church, that people would be set free. I said, yeah, I do remember. He said, do you remember on the first Sunday you preached in January, did you remember that you declared because you felt that God was going to free Grace Church from anxiety. And I said, yeah, I do remember. He said, Troy, this is war. This is spiritual war. So I get up, go home. It's around 6 o'clock. I go into my house, and I'm just being totally up front with you. I got out of my house, and this fear came over me. This fear came over me. I said, God, what is this? I said, what is this? And I could just feel this fear. So I got up. I was in the living room. I got up, and I just went into my bedroom. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just went into my room. And I just lied there on the bed, and I prayed. I said, God, this fear is not from you. This fear of this war is not from you. And I lied there, and I'm not trying to act really super spiritual, but I lied there for 2 hours. And I made a decision that fear would not dictate my actions. That fear would not dictate my actions. You could say, well, Troy, that's like putting your head in the sand. When the ground began to shake and the stone was rolled away, His perfect love cast it off. I just said, God, I will not let fear dictate my actions. Do I believe this is war? Yeah. But I believe that God always wins the war. Gideon was letting fear dictate his actions. He got fearful, so he hid in a hole. He's threshing wheat. This would have taken him at least triple, quadruple the time, maybe longer the time to thresh this wheat in a hole. And we do the same thing. We let fear control our lives, and we get stuck doing things for much longer periods of time than what we should be doing. The devil loves to do that to us. He likes fear to dictate our actions, wasting time doing things that are not effective. And that's exactly what Gideon was doing. He was threshing wheat, and it wasn't effective. And God will say, and the devil will say, you know what, you should do this, or you should do that, or you should, and we get caught up in fear. But what if this, or what if that? Don't waste time doing things that aren't effective. But Gideon was afraid. And the first thing he did was he let fear dictate his actions. And the second thing he did is at that moment he was living lower than his calling. See, God had bigger and better things in the very next chapter for Gideon. But he was living lower than his calling. He was afraid. He let fear dictate his actions. And he was living lower than his calling. The Acadian people have spent too long living lower than their calling. They've let fear grip their hearts. So he let fear dictate his actions. He lived lower than his calling. I mean, God was sending an angel to tell him that in the near future you're going to lead an army to defeat. But he was just afraid. The next thing that we need to do is we need to let God control our destiny. See, Gideon's main goal was to not get his grain or his wheat stolen. He was trying to control his future. Gideon was trying to control his future. We need to let God control our future. There's nothing I can do to control or dictate or change my future. God can. God is in control of my future. And so Gideon wanted to just protect his wheat and protect his family, and he wanted to be control. We need to give control over to God. And the next thing Gideon had to do, I was feeling very creative because they all start with L, if you didn't notice. He let fear dictate his future. He was living lower than his calling. And we need to let God control our destiny. So we have an angel of the Lord that comes and sits under the tree near Gideon. And he speaks to him. And Gideon had a very important choice to make in that moment. Gideon had to let go of his fear. I mean, the angel of the Lord speaks to him. There's this moment. We don't know how long it is. We don't know how short it is. But he has to go through this process. Somehow, I'm hiding, and you're calling me a mighty man of valor or a mighty warrior. And he's got to process this through somewhere in this moment. And he has to let go of his fear. I'm going to say something, and I don't mean to make it sound small, but I believe living in fear is a choice. It's a choice. And we tie ourselves to that. Gideon made a choice to live in fear, and he made a choice to crawl into the winepress, and he made a choice to hide from his enemy, and he made a choice. Living in fear is a choice. And when I lied in my bed on Monday night, I wasn't feeling, I just lied in my bed and I just said, God, you told us on Sunday morning that we can declare your promises. And I cast out all fear. And I will not live in fear. And in that moment, I had a choice. In that moment, I could crawl into bed and just stay there. Or I could get out and fight. Next thing that we need to do. First of all, we need to not let fear dictate our actions. We need to make an effort to not live lower than our calling, because God has a call on every person in this room. And we need to let God control our destiny. We need to let go of fear. And lastly, we need to live in victory. See, somewhere along this journey, Gideon just had to realize this battle wasn't his. So he climbed himself out of the hole in the ground. He said, whatever you have for me, I'll do. This battle's not mine. He didn't have to live in defeat, but he could walk in victory. With God in control, even the impossible is possible. Gideon, in the next chapter, Gideon has all these thousands of men. God takes a bunch of men away, and then he says, take them down to the river. The men that you have left, let them drink out of the river. And whoever puts the water up to their mouth, they'll be in your army. And whoever puts their face down like a dog, send them home. And only 300 people picked up water, so he sent everybody home, besides 300 people. And then he doesn't give them guns or arrows, or he gives them clay jars and lights. He says, here, take these, because this is what God told him to do. He said, so here, take these, and in the middle of the night, We're going to go down there, we're going to yell and scream, we're going to smash our jars and shine our lights, and we're going to defeat the enemy with jars and lights. With jars and lights. Like if Dave was really attacking me and all I had was a jar and a light, I would have been in pretty bad shape. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, or fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small or being small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that others won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We are born to make manifest the glory of God, that within us, it's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence liberates others. It's very important for us to face our fears. Not just for our own freedom, but so that we can glorify God through our freedom. Because He came, sent His Son on a cross so that we might be free. And walking in captivity is an insult to God. Is an insult. He sent His Son for me and you. And walking in anything less than what He sent His Son for is an insult. What I find my favorite part of the story is Gideon is hiding in a hole and he's doing a useless task of trying to thresh wheat with no wind. And the Lord sends an angel, and the angel says this: "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." The Lord is with you, mighty warrior. Okay, he's hiding in a hole so that someone doesn't steal his dinner. He said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." There's only one explanation for that. That in that moment, God saw him for what he could be, not for what he was. Oh, am I thankful for that. I am so thankful that he sees me for what I could be, not for what I was. And the same goes for every person in this room. God does not see you for what you are in this moment. He sees you for what you can be. And he has a call for you and a call for me. And that call is not to live in fear. My favorite part of the story, mighty warrior. In closing, I believe that walking with God every day, I believe that every day he's going to ask us to get out of a place that we're comfortable. So the other day we were, when that freak snowstorm on Wednesday, and we know it was Wednesday because it was snowing. And so the freak snowstorm comes up. We had a kid at our house, and we decided that we better take him home because, who wants an extra kid? And so I go to take him home. He lives on the front of the bay there. So I start down the road, and we get to the driveway at the Dune Inn there, and it's got snow in there, and I start to turn in, and Penny's like, "Don't go in there. You're gonna get stuck." So I went down to the next driveway, turned around, and started back. She's like, "Just stop on the road and let the boy off, and Noah will walk him in, and we'll wait here." I said, "No, I can make it." She's like, "You can't make it." I said, "I can make it." And so we had a little discussion, and I turned to the driveway, hit the gas, I didn't make it. I just went, boom. I mean, there was so much snow fell in like an hour and a half. It was incredible. I just went, boom. And so we get out, and, you know, Penny was very understanding about the whole thing. I told you couldn't make it. See, that didn't look like there was that much snow, but you should have listened to me. And anyways, we get a shovel, we dig ourselves out, and boy's friend comes out, helps push us out. We get out, and we make our way home, the whole way home, you know. And I told you we were going to get stuck. Anyway, so we get home, and we're just about 2 or 3 driveways from our house, and there's this young girl there, and she's stuck in her driveway. And I'm like, ah, sucker. No, I didn't do that. So she's stuck in her driveway. And so we're going to go by, and Penny was like, I mean, it was bad, right? And it was me, Penny, and Noah. And so we stop, and she's there trying to take snow out with her hand. She had this little, like, kid shovel. And I was like, we'll be right back. We're going to go get a shovel. So I dropped Penny home, and me and Noah went back, and she was there, and her boyfriend was there, and we started to dig her out. And I mean, I wasn't stuck compared to her. She was stuck. Her car was all jacked up, and I said, I couldn't even tell if she was coming or going. Like I said, are you coming here or leaving here? To try to figure out which way to push her. And Noah's lying on the ground with this little kid shovel, and he's raking snow out from underneath, and we're shoveling, and we shoveled, and they were, I mean, so we put one of them in the car. I won't tell you which one it is, because I wouldn't want anyone to think I was making fun of anyone. But one of the people get in the car, and I said, okay, we're all going to push, and you push on the gas, and like we're going to rock you. So when we get you to the top, push the gas. When you come down, let go of the gas. You know what I mean here? So this person gets in the car. I said, okay, you ready? She's like, we're ready. This person goes, like the wheels weren't even turning. I'm like, push harder. I'm like, okay. It's a blizzard out. I'm like, push the gas. Like, and the truth is, honestly, and I'm just going to sound hard, the truth, I was so frustrated. So we dug, and 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 we dug. And then, like, finally the car looks like I could push it out of there by myself. And the whole time I kept saying, we need to get something. Do you have anything in the house? Like, even some cardboard or an old shirt or anything we can put underneath the tires to get some traction, because it's icy here. No, we don't have anything. You don't have anything in your whole entire house? Anyways, I was getting frustrated. I was being nice, though. So finally, I'm standing there beside Noah. He's like, Dad, what are we going to do? I said, I think we need to go home. Like, I was so frustrated. I was like, we're not going to get this car out of here. I think we need to go home. And he looked at me. He said, Dad, we're not leaving here till they're out. I said, but I'm really cold. That's what I wanted to say. I'm like, finally I said, listen, do you have anything, an old scarf, anything that we can put under the tires? I'm telling you, we can get this out of here. Finally, one of them says, okay, we'll go look for something. They come out with some scars, they put them under the tires, and I'm not joking, I was like, just push them right out. He goes, wow, you're smart. I said, yeah, I was smart 45 minutes ago too when I had the idea. But I didn't say that. That's what I wanted to say, but I didn't. But you know what? I just wanted to go home. You know, no one was listening to me. You think I'd be used to that by now, but you never get used to people not listening to you. And they're like, they weren't listening to me. They wouldn't listen to me. And I said, you know, I just want to go home. But you know what? Every day I believe God calls us to get out of our comfort zone. And He needed a little boy to tell me, Dad, we're not leaving here till they're out. We're not leaving here till they're out. Church, listen. If you never write down anything I ever say, write down this. Do not let fear dictate your actions. Do not live lower than your calling. Always let God control your destiny. You can't control the future. Always make a choice whenever you can to let go of fear and always live in victory. And I don't mean walk around and say, I'm not sick when you're obviously sick. That's not what I mean. I mean, understand that the God of the universe sent His only Son to bear your sickness, your pain, your shame, your guilt, your unforgiveness, your hurt, everything. Everything. Because of that, we can live in victory. And remember that He sees you for what you can be, not for what you are. Why don't we stand today? If you didn't have a pen, you would like those things, let me know and I'll send you those points. But I really believe that this is a moment for you and for me, that we need to stop letting fear dictate our actions. It doesn't mean that we won't be afraid. It doesn't mean that you might not worry. But it means that I won't let it control and dictate who I am. Let's just sing this in closing. Beautiful Lord, wonderful Savior, I am sure all of my days are held in your hand. you're here this morning, you said, Troy, I've never accepted God into my life. I've never said, God, I need you to be in control of my life. I need you to make you Lord of my life. If you're here and you've never done that, Or maybe you did it before and you haven't been living for God. You say, you know what? I want to commit my life again to God. That I will do whatever He asks me. That I will not be controlled by fear. If you're here and that's you, I'd like you to raise your hand. Don't be shy. Say, I want to make a decision to follow Jesus. No matter what the cost. God, I thank you for today. God, I pray that you would speak to us. And we just thank you for everything you've done for us by sending your Son on the cross.